Welcome to the Real News Network. I'm Dharna Noor, joining you from Baltimore. As the presidential race intensifies, more and more attention is being focused on the activity of each of the major party candidates' family foundations. Various conservative publications and Donald Trump himself have called attention to supposed conflict of interest in the donations that the Clinton Foundation has received. Meanwhile, on Thursday, New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman announced that his office will be investigating the Trump Foundation for having solicited donations, even though it does not have a permit to do so, as required by New York state law. Joining us from Rochester, New York, to discuss these two foundations is David Cay Johnston. David is a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative reporter and best-selling author and columnist. He's also the author of the just-released book, The Making of Donald Trump. Thanks for being on The Real News, David.
Dharna, thank you for inviting me.
So you recently penned an article for the Daily Beast in which you compare the Trump and Clinton foundations. So let's begin with the Trump Foundation. Your article highlights that it's relatively difficult to know what the foundation has done since very few of its records are actually public. But what have you found? What does the foundation do, and where do its funds actually come from?
Well, the Donald J. Trump Foundation only has about $1.3 million in it as of its last tax filing, which is for the year 2014. All of the money that remains in the foundation was provided by others. Trump has made only one minor gift in recent years. He gave $30,000 to it in 2008, which for someone worth $10 billion, if he's worth that much, is insignificant. The foundation has been financed primarily by vendors who work with Donald Trump, like the fellow who makes his neckties in China, NBC, which had an association with him through his now canceled TV show, Celebrity Apprentice, and the people who do the World Wrestling Federation. Its gifts, mostly by numbers, are small, insignificant, $1,000 here, $5,000 there. However, in the most recent year, when it gave away about $500,000, 40% of the gifts were clearly self-interested gifts. $50,000 to the prep school where Donald Trump's youngest son, Barron, attends. Another gift was made to the Citizens United Foundation. That's the group that allows all the dark money to go into politics that we don't have to trace. And in addition, in the past, there appear to be, by my count, at least 9 illegal acts by the Donald J. Trump Charitable Foundation. Those include buying 2 paintings of himself for $30,000, one of which hangs in a Trump resort. You're not allowed to do that. That's called self-dealing. He bought a Tim Tebow football helmet, likewise for himself. He's used the foundation to pay, according to the Washington Post, more than $250,000 of legal obligations that he had. And he made a $25,000 campaign contribution to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General of Florida, at a time when her office was considering whether to investigate and potentially sue Donald Trump for fraud associated with Trump University. Her office decided not to pursue the case. It lied about the matter by saying it had one complaint when, in fact, there were numerous complaints and more than 8,000 pages of state Attorney General records about the fraud that is Trump University. And all of these are illegal acts that bring into question whether the foundation should be forced to shut down.
Right. Since many of these Trump Foundation donations have been found to be illegal and self-dealing, what should the penalty be for this? Does that constitute a crime?
Well, Congress is actually very lenient about these things. Trump says that he paid a $2,500 fine, which is what the law prescribes for making a campaign contribution with charitable funds. He also says that he's replaced the $25,000 that he gave to Pam Bondi. It's important to understand that the Trump Organization misreported this to the federal government on its tax return and came up with 2 cockamamie stories to try and explain this all away before it owned up to what had happened. On the tax side, it is not a crime. The principal penalty would be to revoke its charitable status. And since Trump is not a donor, he would not suffer any penalty from doing so. And I'd be very surprised if any court anywhere would take any action prior to the election. Generally, courts won't act on matters like this when you've got an election pending because they don't want to be seen as interfering in the political process.
Now, what about the New York requirement to register as a donation soliciting foundation, which the Trump Foundation actually never applied for? Just how illegal is such a violation?
This is a serious matter. The New York State Attorney General, as the guardian of charitable assets, has some significant authority here. He can shut down the foundation effectively. He can require the return of money. And of course, Donald Trump's argument is, well, the Attorney General is a Democrat who's already suing me over Trump University. Clearly, this is politically motivated, rather than the Attorney General is simply doing his job of enforcing the law. And people should know this is in a broad context of the things that I describe in my book, The Making of Donald Trump, that my peers in the news media are not going into, of lifelong illegal conduct by Trump, where he thumbs his nose at the law. He cheats people out of money, illegal immigrants who work for him, employees, vendors who supply goods to him, and does business with American mobsters, Russian mobsters, con artists, a major cocaine trafficker whom he sought big favors for and did business with for years.
Now let's turn to the Clinton Foundation, which is far larger and apparently more professionally run. It has a staff of thousands. Where does the Clinton Foundation get its money, and where is it spending it?
Yeah, it doesn't have a staff of thousands. The Clinton Foundation, first of all, gets money from the Clintons. The Clintons tithe. They give 10% of their income in the years since Bill Clinton left the White House. And I actually compared the giving rate of the Clintons to the giving rate of Donald Trump based on their wealth. And if you assume Donald Trump is telling the truth when he says he has $10 billion, then the giving rate of the Clintons is literally 1,000 times the giving rate of Donald Trump. If you take Donald Trump's word about all the gifts he says he's made that no one can find any evidence of, notably David Fairnhold at the Washington Post, but I have done similar work, then the giving rate for the Clintons would be 37 times Donald Trump's giving. And of course, the Clintons are not nearly as wealthy. They're worth about no more than $62 million, whereas Trump claims $10 billion. The Clinton Foundation publishes its audited financial statement. The Trump Foundation does not, even though as a soliciting organization by law it's required to. The Clinton Foundation underwent, because questions were raised about the gifts received from foreign governments and wealthy foreign people, all of whom have lots of business before the government and the State Department, a forensic audit. A forensic audit means that in a normal audit, you sample. Auditors will go through and pull every 13th file or every 33rd file just to see if things are as they should be. In a forensic audit, you look at every single transaction. The audits are on the website of the Clinton Foundation, and they found nothing of consequence that was amiss. The few things that were wrong that were corrected. And unlike the scattershot and self-interested giving of the Donald J. Trump Charitable Foundation, the Clintons don't get any money from the foundation. And there are, at this very moment, as people are watching, at least 11 million people on this planet who are alive and breathing, and therefore not a lot of orphans, because the Clinton Foundation increased the number of people who are getting HIV medications in poor countries from about 250,000 to close to 12 million people.
But the Clinton Foundation, in the case of the Clinton Foundation, most of the accusations leveled or the questions brought up have to do with the conflict of interest or quid pro quo. So what does the evidence say about this?
Well, when you look at not only the news reports on it, but the emails and things, I don't see anything of great consequence there. One of the Washington Post recently did a piece about an effort to get a job for someone who had been an intern. Well, what is surprising about somebody sending an email saying, hey, we have this intern who's doing a good job, you should look at him to hire them. And by the way, there's no evidence the person got hired. Anybody who's going to do things on a global scale with very wealthy people in large governments is going to be able to say, well, wait a minute, this outfit also had dealings with the State Department.
But one of the major issues that's been raised in terms of the amount of money it's raised is that the Clinton Foundation has received $10 to $25 million from Saudi Arabia at a time when relations between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia have been very close. The Obama administration, for instance, has agreed to over $100 billion in arms sales to Saudi Arabia and essentially is supporting its actions in Yemen, amongst other things. So is that not a conflict of interest, given that Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State for half of Obama's term in office?
Well, the question I would ask is what happened? What was the damage that was done here? We have been trying for years to make sure that the Saudis operate within the American sphere. They have a terrible government that beheads people for adultery and fosters a lot of awful behavior, including people who blow themselves up and kill innocent people. But this has been going on for years. There's no indication of anything that was done that was unusual or out of what has the routine business, even if you and I don't like the business, as a result of this. I mean, nobody's pointed to something that was changed and evil that grew out of this. That's the point I'm trying to get across. And, we don't live in a sanitized world where people are saints. We live in a real world. And there's no indication the Clintons in any way have benefited from this foundation other than prominence. And there is evidence that they've done very substantial good work here.
Okay, a more general critique that's made of political foundations in general, of these family foundations, is that this kind of foundation gives a lot of political power to wield. Do you take issue with this, and is there anything?
I wouldn't dispute at all. I mean, I think that the Clintons have used their foundation to promote the things that they think are important in the world, and that inherently promotes them. Right now, Bill Clinton is the biggest rock star in the world. When Barack Obama leaves, he's going to way surpass Bill Clinton. And the Clintons, by the way, have made it clear they are closing down the foundation if she wins the election. But, soliciting money for which you do actual good works and save 11 million lives, let's compare that now to Donald Trump's self-interested giving in buying paintings of himself and making illegal campaign contributions. These are not equivalents. There's no moral equivalency here.
Thank you so much. David Cay Johnston joins us today from Rochester, New York. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to talk to you again about this soon.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Real News Network.